I think it might be useful to start off by saying kind of what each center primarily does. So the
Mm.
thinking center not only thinks, but it thinks by way of compare and contrasting. In a very, when it's running on the type of fuel that it's supposed to be running on, which would be like a white kind of fuel. And you can take a hint from the color too, but then it's not biased, right? It doesn't actually judge things. It compares and contrasts and correlates things. So it assesses things. This is the right way to use the mind. You never get into with the thinking center. You should never get into things like and dislike. That's more of an emotional thing. It is just a
Mm.
registration
Mm.
department. Okay. And it should also be constantly on the lookout for collecting what's called stock, collecting new bits of information that it might be able to add up later. All right. The moving center, running on red, is responsible for movement, right? Anything that is movement oriented or habitual, which is another kind of movement inside the system, something that becomes a habit, belongs to the moving center as well.
Mm.
Okay. So what does the moving center wish to do? It wants to move. It wants to express itself. This is why when you want to learn about something, it's often, very helpful to pick it up and do things with it. All right. To actually hold it in
Mm.
your hands, look at it, get its weight, get its feeling, all of these sorts of things. Um, you understand? So the moving center
Yeah.
just loves to move this thinking center from place to place so that it can be exposed to new things. The instinctive center running on blue has to do with the regulation of the system. So when you are hungry, it's what motivates you to go eat.
Mm.
When you're thirsty, it motivates you to drink. When you're cold, it causes the shivering in the body and drives you to seek a warmer place. Um, it also, when you walk into a room, if you're very in tune and sensitive to the instinctive center, it will look out for dangers. Okay. It already knows where like the sharp corners are in the room. It knows, anything you might stumble or trip over. Okay. The emotional center is probably the most misused aspect of people. It's meant to connect. It's meant to be able to connect to something and create a tuning fork, a resonance with it. Do you know the idea of the tuning fork? Right? Where I've talked
Yeah.
about it before, holding two tuning forks tuned to the
Mm.
same thing, yeah. But that's its primary function, is to cause an energetic connection. That's why it's got emotion, motion being the operative word in there.
Mm.
The sexual center is for mixing and marrying things for new results. That's why they say sometimes it's propositional, because it's propositional from the standpoint of it can take something connected to from the emotional center, right? A signal connected to by the emotional center, and a bit of data connected to or processed, I should say, by the thinking center, put them together and make something new out of it, something that wasn't
Mm.
already in the universe of self, or maybe even in the larger universe of the cosmos. Okay. At the lower end of the bar, of course, it takes man and woman, drives them together, and produces children,
Mm.
something that wasn't there before. Yeah, a child, that soul spirit body combination. When you're relating it to the elements, the thinking center relates to the element of air, okay, which gives you an idea of how light and how, air is transparent. Air doesn't bias what comes in, it just accurately transmits what something looks like to you. So there's a clue in that. Fire to the moving center. And so this gives you an idea of
Mm.
balance in the moving center means that you actually have somewhat of an active life. Yeah, the term couch potato, right? Someone who sits there on the
Mm.
couch all day long and doesn't do anything. It's
Mm.
they're probably lacking in vigor in their moving center. Water to the instinctive center, and again, this has to do with this idea of regulation. And cooling. It can be very cooling to the system. That's a blue movement, by the way, what I'm doing here. Okay. If you find that you're running too hot, you do it down near the waist, but if you find that you're running too hot, you can do this sort of movement in your aura and produce this blue energy. Earth to the emotions, yellow, okay, but earth being the element there, meaning that it's stable, it's solid, it's not constantly changing and shifting. An earthquake or a volcano would be an example of that sort of outburst that usually causes destruction. But generally, the idea of earth is to have that sort of smooth, stable, solid aspect to it. Okay. And then wood or ether or void or any number of other things belonging to the sexual center. All of those things have to do with the area or the realm of manifestation. You know, they use wood as the example of a tree because it not only has a line, right? It grows this way, but it also spirals outward. So it's got that sort of yin and yang element to it. Now, if you follow the creative cycle, you got the idea of like, fire creates earth, earth creates metal or air. So they're interchangeable, and we talked about that. And it goes around the circle this way. Okay. And you can reference the diagram from last week, but it goes around the circle this way. That's called the creative cycle. The destructive cycle follows the pentagram around. So fire, for example, what is it? Let's see. Yeah, wood creates fire, fire destroys air, right? We kind of went through there. And so you can look at these sorts of things in your own life. And if you feel like you lack vigor, for example, perhaps you can then go to that symbol and say, this is what I need to increase, or this is what I need to decrease. There's also a lot of traffic you can have with going the opposite way around the pentagram or the opposite way around the circle. So that's a very general kind of way into it. Parts of the body are associated with those sorts of things. Your metabolism, for example, would be a fiery process. Breathing would be an airy process. Your bladder and fluids and limbic systems and all this other type of stuff in the complex having to do with water, so on and so forth. You get the idea. Bones would be the structure having to do with the earth aspect.